So, I'm going to be talking about ego today. Now, ego is basically how you view yourself and all of the conscious and unconscious mechanisms for which you associate with how you think that you are. So, I'm going to explain why it's not as easy to get rid of ego as you think it is, because ego is something that um, takes a lot of time to even become aware of, and only when you can become aware of it can you kind of get rid of it. But it's not so much getting rid of it as it is realizing that that's a part of your self perception, and it's like a feisty child that needs to be understood and picked up rather than kicked and killed off like some discarded element that you should never have had in the first place. There's a reason it was there, there's a reason this paradigm in yourself existed, but you just don't know it yet, and that's why the fact in itself is causing you pain. So I'm going to explain my own situation. Right now, I think I have a very, very minuscule level of ego, but it's never going to be nothing because the way in which it works is you initially start off with probably a moderate amount of ego, a moderate amount of pride and self perception, achievement, and then you realize that you're not so capable as you thought you were, you're not so special as you initially reckoned. So your ego then kind of gets a bit shattered, but not entirely shattered, because the next day something else happens. You prove yourself to be great again, and then um, your ego is once again reinforced. But then eventually, something or a series of things will finally happen, or you finally have some realization that you haven't exactly achieved anything that you wanted to set out to achieve initially, and therefore your ego is going to be completely smashed and destroyed. And the length of time for which you resist this realization that your ego is kind of smashed, the worse the pride gets, and the bigger your ego is going to inflate to, because you're not going to accept that there are things that you cannot do. And eventually, if you're a decent person, if you're not a decent person, then your ego is never going to actually integrate into you. It's just going to be something that's constantly nagging against you forever. But if you're a good person, assuming that you're willing to sacrifice your ego a bit, then your ego is going to be smashed a bit, it's going to be brought down to earth a bit, and your paradigm and your self perception is going to be once again integrated with reality. So this is the first time around. This happened for me about a year and a half ago when I realized that I was causing myself to go through a lot of work and self denigrating activities because I wasn't able to accept the fact that I was just insecure about my place in this world as a man. And until I realized that, I was never going to understand that I need to um, kind of calm down a bit. So that was the first time my ego was smashed a bit. Like, I wasn't so capable as I thought I was. I had failed as a man, I had failed as an entrepreneur because I hadn't managed to get clients. I was never man enough to do it, and I was never um, tough enough socially to just barrage past the all of the flag posts that were saying, look, you can't exactly do this. You can't just relate with people who are so unlike yourself. I never really acquainted myself with the fact that I'm unlike most people because I was so focused on this one goal. Um, and because of that, it blinded me a bit to what I was. I was trying to be something I wasn't. Um, so when my ego was smashed, it was pretty awful for a while because um, there was absolutely nothing that I could bolster up my self image with, because my self image in the first place needed to be bolstered. And when you realize that you're not really a strong person just because you have a load of money in cash and because you have a really good physique or you're really strong or something like that. Like, this is what most humans strive for. They strive for external accomplishments. But if you don't have those, then you're nothing. And if you're nothing when you don't have those, then you're not really a person of character. true character comes from where you are when you realize that you don't have any of those things under your belt, where you are when you realize that none of those things um, matter at all, and what you're doing doesn't really mean crap, to be honest. Like, I used to achieve really highly in school. I was one of the top people in my year academically, but then um, that was challenged at one point, and so I strove really hard to compensate for that insecurity, and eventually it worked. And like, I finished school as one of the top students in my year, but over the last couple of years, I've come to realize, and last couple of months especially, that that means nothing, and I wouldn't care at all if all of that was taken away and remarked, because um, I don't define myself by it anymore. But the process by which you become the person who isn't defined by it is not so easy, because you have to realize, and you have to accept all of the negative. Oh, I guess we're back down to earth again. I guess I'm just like everybody else. It's sort of emotion. You kind of have to accept that, and this doesn't mean that your ego is completely shattered after one time it breaks, because my ego has been shattered multiple times since then, because it has slowly gotten to the point where it's slowly winding back up from its fall, and then something happens again and it's brought back down to earth again, and then it goes up again the next time, but not so high as the last time. It goes back down to this level, and it's um, it's been it gets this level and it's smashed, and then it gets to a slightly less level again, it's smashed again, and this keeps happening and happening and happening, and it keeps going down. So I have somewhat of an ego, but it's so minuscule that I may as well just have none. I may as well just have no care. And the ensuing emptiness from this, the loss of motivation, I've heard it on YouTube, the spiritual awakening, which it may as well be, because this is what happens when you don't have the materialistic accomplishments to compensate your lack of self worth. This is what there is behind the scenes. This is what the millionaire is behind his big mansion. This is what a person truly is, as just a vulnerable, naive, well, not naive, but a vulnerable, almost pathetic person. They don't have the real capacity for economic power or anything like that. It's like the cynic Diogenes, the first cynic who stripped himself of all of his possessions after a disgrace, and then he just made fun of people who still identified themselves with their possessions and with their social standing. You have to just realize, look, yeah, I'm kind of pathetic. Well, let's be honest, but it's not in like a lack of self worth way. In fact, a lack of self worth usually comes from need to be not be pathetic. Whereas I could just be pathetic, but I'm pathetic. That's it. I'm pathetic, and I have achieved nothing in my life. I don't have any real monetary skills. I don't have any qualified and proven abilities. I just have myself, and that's all. That's all you really need. Um, so when you realize that, nothing else really matters. I suppose the things that truly do matter then actually begin to matter, and I'm kind of in the process where I'm figuring that out. The emptiness. Well, you need to be empty before you can be filled with something that actually matters. Get rid of the things that don't matter. Good. That's one step of the process. Now begin to fill yourself with things that actually do matter, and that's the way in which life should go.